what this fly is going to be is it's called, I don't know what it's called. It's called a Bullet Quill. It's a quill-based fly. I've got a size 18 regular nymph hook in the vise, barbless, and I think it's a 7/64 tungsten bead, and the tungsten's gonna be much heavier. It's gonna sink right to the bottom really quickly. And we'll get this thread started right behind the eye of the hook here. And I'll just take some additional thread wraps here to make sure we got that nano silk pretty secure. That's looking fine. We're going to go ahead and cut that tag end off. Put my scissors back. Okay. So we've got our thread attached now. The first material we're going to tie in is going to be actually the Coq de Leon tails for this fly. But one of the things that I always do, these quills, I love them. They make a beautiful fly, but they're very delicate. But it's basically peacock, so you can kind of see the peacock herl right there, but it's been stripped off. And so all you're left with is the quill, and that's why it's called a quill body fly, or a quill bullet. A bullet's probably because it's got a tungsten head on it and it drops like a bullet. But even though I'm putting my Coq de Leon tails on first, I am going to take this and put it in my mouth, and hopefully I can talk while we're going through this, because this is very, very delicate. And what I found is that if I moisten it before I tie it on, it's a little bit more forgiving. There's still a good chance that we're going to break it off when I'm tying, because that's what I do with quill, is break it off. So now I've got my puzzle in my mouth. Yeah, I'm just getting there, kind of. So here's my Coq de Leon, and I'm gonna, it really is hard. I'm gonna pull a few fibers, and I want them straight, coming up straight off of the shaft of the feather there. I don't need a lot, I just got a few, but you notice by holding those up at a 90-degree angle from the stem, then I've got tips that do a pretty good job of lining up. So I'm going to pinch those tips so that I don't lose that, and then I can just pull, and they'll come right off of that Coq de Leon feather. From there, I'm going to switch hands, just for measurement purposes. I want this quill to, maybe be a little less than the length of the space from the bead to the bend of the hook. So if I'm doing that, then I'm probably going to want to tie it in right about there. So whenever I tie in a tail, I tie it in closest to me, and then my thread is going to carry it over to the top. We're going to want this on the top of the hook. I want that to be a little bit longer, so I'm just going to pull on it just a hair, and that's going to do me pretty good. When I'm tying these tail fibers on, usually what I'm going to do is hold, kind of like I am with my fingers right now, those Coq de Leon fibers, and that's just going to help me ensure that they stay on top of the hook. You can see when I move my fingers away that seems like we've accomplished that. So we're going to take this back to about where the barb of the hook would typically be. So we'll just take it right back to there. And then I'm going to move my thread back up because I do want a tapered body on this, and so this additional material is actually helpful in building that body. So I'll go ahead and take that up nearly to the bead, but not quite. We're going to be tying over it, so it's not going to matter too much. And we're going to just snip our ends off there, and hopefully you can see that. That cooked alien makes just a wonderful tail. And I probably have enough for 3 generations of haddons to tie, because they're very big. And they're whiting. Which may sound really stupid, but the thing that I found with whiting hackles is they're very consistent. They're always high quality. The shafts of the feathers tend to be a little bit stronger, so I don't have them breaking nearly as much. So here we are. We're just going to tie on this quill. I need to stop talking and start working anyway. So I'm going to, get this tied on. This is going to be the body of our fly. One thing I don't want to do, especially when I get back to the end, is crank down really hard on this thread. Because again, this cooked alien is very delicate, and if I crank down too hard on my thread, it's actually going to start cutting into it, making it weaker than it already is, and it's already plenty weak. And so there we go. We've got our quill tied on here. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and, take several wraps and build up at least a little bit of a taper body here. This will all be covered up by the quill, so I'm not too worried about covering anything up. I am worried about my skills when I'm doing something like that. That was interesting. So just like I've been shown before, to build up the taper, we want it skinnier towards the bend of the hook and fatter up towards the eye of the hook. We'll accomplish that by taking several runs up and back and shortening those runs every time we go up and back on the hook. So once we have that taper with the thread, and I'm tapering it with the thread because I'm not going to do overlaps with the quill to get it a beefier body. I need to have that beefier body in advance. Now I'm going to get my hackle plier, and I'm going to get my quill into my hackle plier, and this is where you have to be very careful. Okay, so I'm going to hold that up. I certainly want to avoid the point of the hook here as I work my way up the body of this fly. And hopefully what you'll begin to see is that it does a really interesting, nice, segmented body. Again, I've got just the right amount of pressure on here. This is the Goldilocks zone here. It's just right. If you put too much pressure, that's going to break right off. If you don't put enough pressure, it's just going to come unwound. Right now I've got that where I need it to be, so I'm going to go ahead and put some thread wraps in it. I'm still going to hold, notice I still have my hackle pliers, and I'm still holding that piece of quill in place because I really do not want it to break off. And then I'm going to throw some wraps in front of it as well. I'm not going to break it off. Sometimes you can. I'm just going to squeeze my hackle plier and let that get off there. From there I can go ahead and grab my scissors, and I'm just going to go clip this excess off here. From here I'm actually going to I'm going to do the resin right now, the UV resin, and the reason I'm doing it now as opposed to after I tie on some dubbing is I don't want that UV resin to get on the dubbing. But you put the UV resin on here, and then you hit it with a torch or flashlight, and it'll harden into kind of a really hard shell, which is going to make this thing very durable, but it also is going to make it a little bit shiny. So I'm just going to get a little bit. I'm not going to try to get this whole thing done in one pass. So I've got some UV resin here on the head of my pen, and then I'm just going to let that kind of drag down towards the end of the hook here, or to the end of the body. And I'm going to turn it on its side a little bit and make sure that I've got some coating on either side. And once I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and hit it with my, my torch. And what that's going to do is it's going to cure that into a really hard shell, and it doesn't take it very long at all to do that. And it also makes it helps make that ribbing on that quill even stand out more, looking like really buggy and looking like the body of a fly. Okay, so now again, I've got my rotary, so I can turn this upside down, because I'm also going to want to put some resin on the bottom so that it basically is coating all the way around the body of that fly. So here we go with some additional resin. This is going on the underside this time. I'll just go ahead and drag that patiently back to the back. Make sure my sides are fairly well covered. I'll have to look at that because I couldn't see it. It was towards the camera lens. I'm feeling pretty good about that at the moment. So I'm going to go ahead and hit that with the torch. Flashlight, UV light, it's UV resin. So hopefully you can see here why we call it a quill body fly, right? It's a quill. See, now this is dry to the touch. Does a beautiful looking body here. And we're really almost done with this fly. What we're going to do is I'm going to throw some dubbing on here to give it a little bit of a bushy collar. And I'm using Awesome Possum. And for this one, I'm going to go ahead and use black. I'm going to wet my fingers. And then I'm just going to finger dub that right on like that. I like it to dub it really tight because I do like it to look a little bit buggy. So you can see I'm not really, I haven't tied it completely tight down. It's just, you know, fairly loose. But by being that loose, we're going to get that kind of buggy effect. And we're going to throw on just a hair more here. Pardon the pun. It's not hair. It's possum. And get that stretched out a little bit. There we go. So hopefully you're beginning to see that, okay, we've built a really nice, thick thorax up here. And I probably will do some trimming. I can pull those fibers back a little bit and get a few more wraps in there. And then I'm just going to turn straight over to my whip finisher at this point, and we'll finish this bullet quill fly off. So here's my whip finisher. Get that hole hooked in. And the nice thing about this is these wraps, besides being nano silk and not leaving any footprint, we're going to sink down into that bead. So you won't even see it. You won't see it there at all. I'm also not going to put any cement on it. It's in there tight, and I don't want to just completely drench my dubbing that I just tied on, just so that I can get it, get the glue on there. So, but I am going to come in and trim a little bit of this stuff out. Not a lot, but a little, because I do like it to be a little bit buggy. So apparently that is my my level of bugginess that I want in this particular fly.